Montech sent us this King 95 case to look at. It says quality meets innovation in style. If by innovate they mean copy the 011 Dynamic, I guess that's true. Let's talk about it. EK Waterblock's quantum torque fittings for PC liquid cooling include static extenders, rotary adapters, offsets, double rotary fittings, and micro series for all small form factor systems. With a wide variety of fittings, your loop building experience becomes much easier, quicker, and more streamlined. And all torque fittings come in 4 major finish options that will blend in with any setup. The standard nickel-plated versions, the special matte black, satin titanium, and fittings plated with real gold. With replaceable locking rings available in multiple colors and aesthetic color rings only available from EK, the customization options are almost endless. To see the full lineup of EK Waterblock torque fittings, follow the link in the description below. There's 3 absolutes in life. Apparently I'm a Sith. It's death, taxes, and everyone is going to copy the 011 Dynamic, which is funny because I guess when you continue to reference and style of another case, that means that case was highly successful. So anyway, we're going to talk about this today. I was just like, look, Montech is a sponsor of ours, and I was just like, you got to understand, I'm going to call out the fact that this looks just like an 011 Dynamic, which Montech's not the only one copying the design style. Everybody is these days. There's no denying that it's an extremely popular layout these days. So what do you get? Well, Montech is also a very, dang. Okay, well that's not very 011 Dynamic-y. Whoops. Accessory box fell out. Look at that vent on the back side.
I think Steve might actually be happy with that amount.
It's like the 011 Dynamic had a baby with a height Y70 in terms of the ventilation. Anyway, as I was starting to say, the whole, I feel like it's sort of been done to death, but we're still gonna take a look at it. The whole motherboard tray fan layout with the glass wraparound in the front, it's like, I'm craving something new now. Okay, the 011 has been so popular for so many years, and like right around the time that people are now getting on board with this whole design is when we need the design to change, right? So there's no doubt there is a lot of ventilation in this case. One thing that's actually kind of interesting to see though, it's nice, is they got this wraparound glass. So it's kind of like, you don't want to just be abashedly just copying. But the layout in terms of the motherboard tray and the back wall, that's been like, everyone's doing it now. It doesn't matter if it's Corsair or it's Montech or it's NZXT or it's Height, like everyone's doing that, okay? Although Height, to be fair, has really kind of changed a lot of it, and fans on the bottom and the way it's designed is different. But overall, the same. So let's talk about the glass. All their white cases get these beautiful stainless screws. Okay, so this is like a premium function or feature on a case that does not really carry a premium price tag. Dang, this glass is thick. As you can see on the top, we've got a dang beefy. So it's got this kind of a curved mesh panel with this flat panel on top. So that has to be assembled somehow, and I'm glad that they're screwed, and not just riveted. Okay, 5 mils. 5 mil thick glass, that's pretty thick. Some of the more inexpensive cases, and I'll get to the price in a moment, but some of the more inexpensive cases have very thin tempered glass, which is just sketchy feeling. So the top here has 4 screws that, again, share the same very nice looking stainless steel. Dang, that's quality. Look at the thickness of that head. So there's 4 screws holding on the top fan/radiator bracket. I like that the bracket is sort of indented up into the top because of that shape I just showed you, we've got space up here, which means it can move more of the cooler and the fans up out of the way of the motherboard, so it's not interfering with stuff. But as you can see, this literally just pops off. So you can mount this to your AIO cooler, mount your fans to it, and then put it in after the fact. It's a whole lot easier that way. You can see it's got 2 rails for 120s and 140s. Unfortunately, the 140 rails, you can see quite a bit of it is blocked by this thick piece of metal right here. So it's still only gonna have effective airflow very similar to a 120 because this is the only opening. More brands have been doing this. I'm not a fan of that, pun intended, because of the fact that it does block airflow. So as you can see, we do have a massive amount of airflow as well as mesh material in here. fabric type of material. That way, it's like a screen material. That way it can work as a dust filter as well. Even though the entire back is ventilated, the only thing that's gonna really be pulling air in through the back actively is gonna be your fan of your power supply, because you have a vertical mounted power supply right here pulling air in. But this also just keeps us from having too much positive pressure. It would almost always be kind of a neutral, if you will. Air is gonna just escape where it needs to. I'd much rather have a lot of ventilation and positive pressure than negative pressure pulling in dust through all these vents. Speaking of vents, you can see the top right here, we have vents on the second chamber as well. This is a dual chamber design. So what that means is we have separation between our power supply and our drives and things from the main components, which would be our CPU, our RAM, and our graphics card. So those are independent of each other. We have this nice curved front panel that, as you can see, does this come off? Oh, it does come off. I'm gonna tell you right now, I guess I'll just tell you the price of the case, because I wanna talk about the price and then this. It's $109 for the black, it's $119 for the white. And that's actually quite a bit cheaper than most cases in this price point that come with these features. To offer a $109 case with curved tempered glass is not easy. Curved tempered glass is very expensive to produce. So the fact that they're able to do it and be able to offer it still at a competitive price point is really nice. And because we got the curved tempered glass and no vertical piece right here, you can see this is just open, right? So this actually makes it a lot easier to build in your system to get to things for cable management and plugging stuff in. It's actually really nice. Speaking of getting to things and plugging things in, the rear, the rear piece right here is also removable. So when you go to install your fans and or your, got more right here. Does it actually swing away? It does. So when you go to install your fans and your potential radiator here, or even an AIO right there, this is on a hinge, which is actually very neat because now you can install it, get your stuff in there, and then boop. So we'll take a look at the accessory box, because that'll give us some clues. Oh, check it out. Okay, so that's why it's removable like that, because I just told Phil, why would you want to put something in the front? There's just glass there. It comes with a mesh panel as well. I mean, the porosity isn't great. The porosity means the amount of opening versus the amount of solid blocked off space. It's less than 50%, which means less than 50% of the surface area is open. But that's better than 100% of it being closed with glass if you need the extra airflow. So you do get this replacement panel for the front. That's nice to see. You also get what looks like another drive mount. Even the accessory case comes with nice stainless steel screws, white Velcro, extra standoffs, all sorts of extra hardware. And then, okay, I know I started off this video kind of like, did you copy, but very few white cases actually include white front panel cables. Because think about it, white cables on a white case look better than black cables standing out on a white case. Now sure, every other cable is gonna probably end up being black that is in your system, but as you can see right here too, all of the front panel cables on here are whites. Now we do have a front panel header already right here. So this adapter right here is in case your motherboard for some reason does not conform to what's become sort of the adopted standard, even though it's not an official standard of front panel pin layout. This is an adapter so that you can adapt it to the standard pins. And it's long enough so that you could still hide it behind the motherboard tray and not like have this whole thing sticking out with this pigtail. Okay, so we actually figured this out. It's pretty neat. There's a double hinge right here. So this hinges out, and I was like, that doesn't line up. This hole does not line up down there, but it's a double hinge, look, boop. So then you can just take that double hinge and then that lines up right there and you can put the screw in and then you have a fan mount in the front. You still retain a fan mount here if you need it. And then if you put the mesh grill on the front and then you have intake fans on the front and you still have intake fans here. So in the old brackets, like if you had to relocate the bracket, then you would lose the fan mount, but now you get the fan mount on both sides. You can still mount fans and radiator here. You got lots of depth to have a radiator there and still have fans right there. And you can still obviously have fans mounted on the bottom because the bottom looks like it's support up to a 360 if this bracket is in the rear position. If the bracket is in the front, you lose some depth here because of the bracket itself. But the fans fit within the cage right here. And so when you fold that open, it pushes the fans more close to the, it's between the mesh and the bracket. So then you still have a lot of space on the inside. That's actually very nice. We were thinking now for the price, 109 bucks, right? 119 for the white, but 109 for the black. It just costs more to produce white because they're a lower volume product, so you don't get as much of the manufacturing discount for white. That's why white's always more expensive. But anyway, let me take this off real quick. Now you guys can see this double hinge thing, like little things like this, you tend to not really find in value cases. I don't want to call it quote unquote budget because it is over $100, so it's not a low budget product, but it's still a value product. Anyway, moving on, as you can see, ATX support. eATX would hang off the side. However, if it's not hanging off too far, you could still wrap your cables back around and come into here. It would just look weird having an eATX board on here hanging off the end. That's the downside about these products that are designed specifically to a certain like width standard. Grommets at the top, grommets at the bottom. They are white, which is nice. We got a fan. This is the first real negative for it. Full fan filter for the bottom. However, it comes out the back, which means if you're on a desk or something, right, and you've got it all cable managed and tight in the back of your desk, you can't take it out if there's a wall there, which means you'd have to unplug everything or pull out the slack, push your PC way out of the way to pull that long of a filter out. Almost every modern case these days has a filter that comes out sideways for the reason that I just described. So I guess there had to be some sort of a drawback, right? Also too, what's nice is we have a choice on where we want to install our power supply. So as you can see, it can go here or here. This is 1000% O11 Dynamic. O11 Dynamic was the first one to do this. Ironically, with the Evo and all that, they made it one. Like it just goes in one spot. But anyway, you can relocate the drive cage down to the bottom or vice versa. I don't think there's any reason to put the power supply up here because then it's going to be hanging fully under its own weight, where at least on the bottom right here, as you can see, there's a little support bracket. And because it's lifted off the ground, you can still tuck some cables away under here if you needed to hide cables. Let's talk about the back here because we need to see now, like this is obviously a removable piece. So obviously this does hinge open, so you have a lot of room to access the rear compartment to mount your drives and RGB controllers or whatever else that you need. The downside is if you're going to utilize this bracket in the front, like so, and you want to put a radiator or whatever right here, you're not gonna be able to open that if it's hard tubed and like rigid down kind of a thing. You also might actually have some width issues right here, to be honest, between a rad. You'd be able to mount the fans. There's probably enough depth between here and here to mount a radiator. Like you could do a 25 mil and a 30 mil rad, no problem right there. It's just, it's gonna get really tight. Like this, it's not really what seems like the idea behind this. This is really meant for fans. But to be honest, the fact that you can fit a 360 on the top and you can fit a 360 on the bottom, I would just do 360 top and bottom there. Let this be fans. I'd probably even just leave the glass on the front, to be honest. So some people are just like, we need as much airflow as possible. So having options come with the case that don't cost anything extra is actually really nice to see. You know, past that, there's not a whole lot to talk about. In terms of too much more elser to talk about, because I guess I could complain slightly that this is faux. Like it's meant to look like brushed metal, but it's just plastic. We do have RGB in here though. This entire edge right here does light up. See, this is why not having screws here would be nice, because I want to open it again and now I got to take off a screw. So having a magnets or a snap, little ball snap would have been nice. So in terms of front panel connectivity, here's your RGB header. So this is going to obviously be for that surround on the front of the case. You have front panel audio, front panel connector, USB-C, and your USB 3. So pretty straightforward connectivity, pretty standard in all these cases. In terms of cable tie downs, you do have the several rings of Velcro here to hold stuff down, but past that, there's not really any other mount like spots to be able to like zip tie loops. There's really nothing else there. I like this big flat area right here, because if you did mount the power supply up here, then you have a big flat surface area here to mount like your RGB controllers and stuff too. So I wouldn't rule out mounting the power supply up top. You could. This is probably kind of a moot point of saying that this is here to support your power supply because they're not as massive as they used to be. Just keep in mind too that you're going to need, if you mount it up here, you need an area to still be able to put excess cables. So if it's down the bottom, it's going to probably just be excess cables above it. Because of the giant motherboard cutout right here, you'll lose the ability to mount anything up here like RGB. I keep saying RGB, but RGB controllers, AIO controllers, fan controllers, they're a thing, right? They're a necessary evil these days. So you want to keep in mind as you do your layout planning where you want that to mount. I started this video off kind of like, man, why does everyone keep copying the design? I guess the only thing that at this point has any sort of similarities with the O11 Dynamic is just going to be the layout, the overall layout. But there are only so many ways that you can make a rectangle. So, I mean, with that said, it's a pretty solid layout. It's not that big. You could still obviously fit very large graphics cards in here without a problem. What I need to check real quick though is cooler height. And one thing you're gonna wanna keep in mind too is graphics card height, because sure, you might be able to fit the length and the thickness of a 4080/4090, but if they're really tall graphics cards and you're not using any sort of a 90-degree adapter for the 12-volt high power, you might have an interference issue with the glass panel right there. So it gives us 175 millimeters worth of height for the cooler. That's actually quite a bit. A lot of coolers fall into the more 150, 160 range. A big tower cooler would probably be very close, but I have a feeling you'd still be able to fit it. You're just gonna, and as you can see here, if I look at the back, if your graphics card mounts right here, you know, have extra height, you could probably still, for the most part, get your 4080, 4090s to fit with a tight bend on the cable. You just wanna make sure you're not putting too tight of a bend on that because of the fact that you don't wanna cause any of those cables to start to pull out because of the melting issues that we all know and love with the 12-volt high power cable. Actually, the melting reports have really started slowing down. I think the 12-volt by 6x2 or whatever it is, I think that started phasing its way in, which has kind of started solving some of those problems. But there are 90-degree adapters, obviously, and there's revisions to those adapters that are even better now at, I don't want to knock on wood, but I think the revision to the cable mount adapter has not failed yet. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Sound off down below how you feel. I think this is one of those things where you just like, you gotta compare and contrast cost to value. This case in black at $109 US is very feature rich. The first time we ever discovered Montech, we were doing a super budget build at Micro Center and we saw the Montech brand. We actually were like, what's with the Illuminati triangle? We didn't know what that was. We got the case and we fell in love with it. And we've had several cases come through here from Montech since, and they all seem to be derivative, but have their own Montech touches put in there, which is nice to see. They're not just straight up copies. So aesthetically, it's hard to look at anything with this layout and not have people immediately go, that's just an O11 Dynamic. Because the O11 Dynamic was the first to really come out with that layout. But it's nice to see people take that layout and run with some new innovations in it, if you will. Which is forcing Lee and Lee to also have to innovate, which just makes everybody win because then you're getting innovation in the space where it's very difficult to take a box that holds PC parts and make it fun and exciting. That's not easy. So anyway, I'll put links down below to the Montech King 95. You guys can check it out. Amazon links for pricing and all that sort of stuff. There is also a Pro. We might look at that one separately. Basically, the Pro tends to take everything you see with the standard model and then just like one up it a little bit. But what are those one ups? Well, I can tell you that they're like $30 or $40 more. So we'll have to see what that $30 and $40 get you, but you have to wait for our next video for that. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Oh yeah, and also too, the art in the manual is not the greatest, but I made do.